Welcome to my show. A guest here. His name is Matt Walker. Mr. Matt, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Mr. Matt. Firstly, you are a main physiologist. You are also an international mountain guide. Can you please, Mr. Matt, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mr. Matt?
Yeah. I'm a psychologist by education and a mountain guide by trade. So I've been climbing mountains since I was, I guess, about 18 or so, and been climbing mountains all over the world, and still do that professionally. And along the way, I got a master's degree in psychology, and I connect the two worlds together. I talk about the lessons learned from adventuring and climbing in mountains and how to apply that into our personal and professional lives. So a little bit of both, a little bit of the time in the mountains as well as in the personal development field.
Oh, that is very, very inspiring. Thank you so much for the insight, Mr. Matt. And also from the experience you've had as a main physiologist, have you written any book or are you planning to write any book in the coming future, Mr. Matt?
Yeah, so I wrote a book. My first book was about 10 years ago, a book called Adventure in Everything. And I can talk to you a little bit about that. And then my next book is actually wrapping up right now and will be out later this year. Um, but the book that I released previously was called Adventure in Everything, and I can send you a document so we can put in the show notes for the listeners that goes over kind of what it's about. And the basis of it is that it's about what I call the five elements of adventure, the things that make up and define what an adventure is. And I'll list those in a moment, but what you'll see is that they not only pertain to adventures in the outdoors and in a kind of a traditional sense of adventuring, but also into how we show up in our personal lives, in our community, in our family, and that kind of thing. So the five elements of adventure are high endeavor, uncertain outcome, total commitment, tolerance for adversity, and great companionship. And so you have to have all five of those. Um, and the ones that really stick out for me are uncertain outcome and well, I guess they all stand out, but the big one I think that we're tested on a lot is uncertain outcome, how we deal with uncertainty and the unknown.
That's very, very massive.
That's a real, yeah, a real cornerstone, real foundational aspect of what defines an adventure.
That's really massive, but honestly speaking, it will be a very, very powerful one, Mr. Matt. Thank you so much for those insights on those books, Mr. Matt. And also, Mr. Matt, I would like to dive to the point of community building around men in today's society, Mr. Matt. We do know that in
Hmm.
our time today, due to the increase in technology, due to the increase of internet and conversation like what you and I are doing today, there are a lot of community that have been declined. There are a lot of things, community are not really like before anymore. So I would like to, dive into the points of the community, most especially for men, Mr. Matt. Why do you think
Yeah,
community building is particularly important for men in today's society, Mr. Matt?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. It's really easy to disconnect and get sucked into um, the phone and the internet and these little spaces by ourselves. And men aren't that great at joining in community to begin with, and then you add the extra element of the internet on top of that. It makes it very isolating. And one of the things that I really work heavily on is bringing men together to form relationship and not only to do deeper work together, but then also to for more play and more fun and more and work together. And the way that one of the challenges I find is that it's we as men tend to isolate, and then we also tend to feel like, oh, there's if we have a challenge or a problem, we'll figure it out on our own, and then we'll move forward from there. And being in community really helps normalize that the challenge that you have and the challenge that I have are probably very similar and close, even if our backgrounds are different. We have similar problems, similar challenges. Um, and then just being able to voice that and gain the wisdom from others, it's incredibly powerful for our own healing, and then also for uh, normalizing the challenges and difficulties so that we don't have to suffer on our own. We don't have to reinvent the wheel and figure it out on our own, but to do it in community. And ironically, sometimes the only option we have is to do it online. And so
Mm.
it is an odd paradox that we join in community online in order to be able to, even though the internet can also and being online can also isolate. So I find that working with groups of men virtually is deeply powerful. But getting us together throughout the year is also incredibly powerful and important as well. But yeah, I think the biggest takeaway that I've learned in community is the normalization that we all experience, regardless of how much money we make, regardless of where we live, what kind of jobs we have. We all have very similar challenges, and there's wisdom to be gained from each other.
Thank you so much for those insights, Mr. Myers. I completely agree with you. As you said earlier, to share some kind of personal experiences within the community really helps, men. A lot of men now try their best to give, or, try to solve the situation themselves, try to, in that, and it's really caused a lot of pressure, burnout, anxiety, which is not really good on a long term in men. But to have a community whereby one can share one experiences, bring out one issues definitely really helps. It gives the healing and the strength within the men within each other. Thank you so much for those insights, Mr. Matt. And also, I would like to dive to the effective ways you think these men or these groups can be initiated, like can be done very easily. I know you
Mhm.
said more on the internet way, to do it, and also the physical way are more integrating. But what do you think are some effective ways in your experience, Mr. Matt, to initiate a men group or community space, Mr. Matt?
Yeah, one thing one of the unique things about men is that we don't have a we don't have the capacity to stay deep for very long, to stay in conversation for very long. We go in and then we come back out, and then we do something physical or movement or active, and then we go back in, we come back out. And so we kind of have to honor and acknowledge that that's the process. Like if you asked me to sit down and talk for 2 hours about something, that's pretty hard for me. um, and what I have found the most helpful thing is to be in either, like as I mentioned before, either in work or in activity together, so that there is something else that we're doing, and then being able to connect along that way. So whether it's some sort of, whether it's community service and doing work together, or going out for a hike together, being outside, going, that kind of a thing, where there's an activity and then there's downtime in between. And so um, one of the, you know, I think it would, if someone was to ask me today that I had to start a men's group and I had to start a way of men gathering this moment today, and the it would be very difficult for me to bring a whole new group of men together right this moment and say, hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk and we're gonna process and facilitate for an hour tonight. That wouldn't be received very well. But if I said, hey, we're gonna go for a walk this evening, or I've got a house project that I need some help with, um, you know can I gather some people together? That's pretty easy to do, and then the other work can come along with it. So my biggest recommendation is find interests, find activities, find movement that brings people together, and then initiate the other deeper conversation and dialogue as part of that. Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Mr. Mars, because when someone have this kind of community, to get them together is very also important in a very long way, honestly speaking. So to get them together and also give them the communication, let's go out, let's do this, let's do that, and having that type of main bond It's really, really
Hmm.
energizing, Mr. Matt. And when someone have tried to initiate that group, I've heard, it's explained better on a way one can get those men together to do things together. What do you think are the key elements? Because when everybody comes together like that and they do it, maybe they'll go for hiking or stuff like that. Most especially when
Hmm.
they go back home, those men might not come back again the way it is again. There might be
Yeah.
something that should even bring them back again. So, what do you feel, or what do you think are the key elements that are very essential for long-lasting male community, Mr. Matt?
Yeah. I think the the I think personalizing it, and so I think it's there's two pieces. There's one is accountability, in asking for support around something, and then being accountable to the group around that. So, um, let's say it's my finances, and I'm not managing my money very well, and I'm asking for some very direct support around that. And then there's an accountability. So I owe the group that information. I owe the group a follow up. Something that has some accountability attached to it brings it together. The other piece would be to be able to um, personalize it. So it's like you there's some sort of partnership between yourself and another individual within the group. That even though the group only gets together occasionally, in the in between space, you're connected to another individual who's in that group, and that relationship builds. So, um, I think the more specific the work that you do is, and the more willing you are to be personal and vulnerable about it, the stronger the group will grow as a result. Um, I think the other thing that's really important is that in a men's group and in this type of experience, that we do have these deeper conversations. We're vulnerable within them. We have that type of relationship, and then we go home and we bring our best self home as a result. Like, we don't try and bring the men's group, the men's experience back home with us. So it becomes a place where the men's group is a place for practice and for being in community together. And then you bring the sharpened part of yourself back home. And I think some of the challenge comes when you try and combine the two together. It actually is really nice to have a separate space completely, a separate community, a separate gathering that's not part of your everyday. So, um, the other thing that I find is in the beginning stages of groups like that is actually just calling it out and saying, hey, it's really easy to not show up for the next one, to have something get in the way, and that we all make a commitment that we're going to try it out for 3 months, see what happens. But asking for that type of commitment. Yeah.
That means asking for those type of commitment and those type of things really strengthen the bonds, make everybody come together and try to interact and see how they could support each other in various ways. That shows how powerful Mr. Matt's community is, to be honest with you, because community really makes everybody knows that, oh, this is a situation. If I am in a situation, every single person can bring their own insight and ideas. If one person is also in a situation, everybody too can bring their own ideas and try their best to do the ways they could assist. That shows the power of community and how it could really help every man in every single way in their life. Thank you so much, Mr. Matt, for that insight, Mr. Matt.
Yeah. And I would add to that part of the strength in these communities is that we witness each other, and we share our perspective, but we don't necessarily give advice. So we're not telling someone else how to solve their problem or what to do, but we're sharing our experience or our wisdom from a problem or a challenge that's similar. Because I think the more that it comes, the more um, that it could come across as like as a us telling each other how to do things or how to solve things, the less we're inclined we're going to be to be a part of that community. So being able to respect that each person's situation is different, the amount of time they need to solve the problem or solve the challenge is going to be different than our own, and just respecting that each person's process is a little different. That also increases buy-in. So, um, but it's hard. I think when I think back about the communities I've been involved in, they've all had a very specific start and end time. So not only for our time together in a certain, like on a given day, but also in totality for the whole experience. And our agreements have been, um, we're going to go for 1 year, or we're going to go for 6 months. And at the 6 month mark, we're going to then come back together and see, is this working? Is it not working? Do we need to change it or not change it? And if we need to end it, then we end it. But doing that increases the commitment level because we know that there's an end date. Otherwise, if it just kind of like goes on without an end date, then it can tend to fall apart, um, or things can change without us really even noticing or realizing it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mars, for that insight. It's so beautiful. Now, getting that, point to that point of advice could really affect the community in one way or the other, but giving some kind of respect towards each other, knowing that every single person's situation is different, and giving those kind of experience within each other is very, very important. Thank you so much for those additional insights on the community. Thank you so much, sir, Mr. Matt. And also, Mr. Matt, for those like people like us who are not even in any man community, honestly speaking. So for those that are not really in a community or who have not belonged to any community, how do you think men who feel they're not in any community really currently now can start finding or building community today, Mr. Matt?
I think surprisingly, one of the easiest things, um, is to ask each other. I mean, I know it sounds really obvious and kind of, um, it doesn't sound that helpful, but what I have found is that, more times than not, that men are craving that type of relationship and community, and it literally is a matter of just asking, and um, and starting small. So, um, that could be, in with friends or community that around a certain interest. If you've got an interest in a football team or something like that, then you're going to go to a football match, and but then, and making that part of the process. Maybe it's through your church, maybe it's through kids or something. But what I have found is that the more often than not, if one man will take the leadership to ask and then refer it to another man, more often than not, it's received positively, and it starts to grow from there. Um, I think I think men are in general seeking and wanting that type of relationship. They just don't know how to find it. So there has to be the first step, which is asking. And so directly in your community doing that. I mean, the other way is to try and find online communities around a specific interest. But if there's anything that I would recommend, to break isolation, it would be hone in on one singular interest that you have, and take the risk, take the challenge to build that up and to go out and build community around that singular interest. So it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's, a local football club, if it's, you know, um, podcasting, if it's whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is, but just choose something. Imagine what it was like when you were a 10-year-old boy and you got really into some topic, and you just like, just couldn't get enough of that topic. Well, taking that same approach as an adult will build community. And that would be, if there's one singular piece of advice, it would be that.
Thank you so much for that insight, Mr. Max. Asking each other and even getting the specific interest that we definitely know that one can focus on in that community to develop the community so that one can know that this is the interest that is that this community is definitely all about. I'm very sure, and I completely agree with you, Mr. Matt. A lot of men are definitely striving for community, and it's definitely not easy. Men is really, really tough. Life is really heavy on us, and we have to definitely know how we could share experiences, share ideas that will really, really help us, and also make us feel like we definitely are not alone, and we are also trying our best to do something great, and also try our best to just become someone to cater for the family, and to also make the best of the life one have come for. So it's definitely inspiring, Mr. Mars, because community is one of the best thing one can definitely have, and definitely one that definitely know how to get himself into it, and know the type of interest that definitely help him to build it or to belong in that community, will definitely help such person in a very, very long way. Thank you so much for those
Yeah,
insights, Mr. Matt. And lastly,
you
Mr.
bet.
Matt, there's a question I normally ask during the end of the show, Mr. Matt. From the forefathers, there are a lot of things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today, Mr. Matt. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mr. Matt, what do you think that thing
Mm.
would be, Mr. Matt?
If there was anything that I could bring back today, I think it would be slower evenings. And so um, evenings and nighttime with cooking and um, music and family together, friends and family together without screens. That would be that type of slow pace of just being able to take at least an hour together, 2 hours together without um, interruption from the digital world. That would be the um, I think I think that would probably be the greatest gift that we could give to ourselves and to our friends and our family, our community, and that would ease everyone's nervous system and increase happiness and satisfaction. Yeah. So more time intentionally unplugged.
Definitely agree with you. Definitely need community, and also the time that we definitely need to build ourselves and also make ourselves a better person in the life of comfort. I want to also sincerely thank you, Mr. Matt, for the opportunity and the time on speaking on community. Community is very powerful. We do know that it's fading, but it's very, very powerful. I think the body is being programmed to be part of something like that. It really helps the body as a whole self. I also want to sincerely thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much, Mr. Matt.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Matt. Bye bye.
Okay.